Hello fellow React enthusiasts, I'm Ari, and today we're going to be creating our first custom hook together. If you've ever found yourself needing to manage a simple true or false toggle state in your React applications, this custom hook is definitely going to come in handy. So let's dive right in. To get here, I've initialized a new React project and added some quick styles that we're going to use on our buttons for this demo. To save some time, I've linked the starter repo with the CSS for this project in the description. So, before we begin, take a minute to pause the video and either clone down my repo or copy in the styles. So, to create our 3 different buttons that toggle different colors, let's start by just adding a button, and we can just call this button 1. And without using a custom hook for now, it seems like the most logical way to approach this would just be to start with initializing a piece of state. And we can use the useState hook to do this. This is just going to be a boolean that's true or false based on the toggle color. And then, in our button element, we can just set up some simple logic to assign a class name based on whether our isColor1 variable is true or not. And we can just use a ternary to write this, so if isColor1 is true, then we're going to set it to the class name of color1, and if not, we can just set it to an empty string. And if we change our useState default value to true, we can see that this works. But we actually want to do this using an onClick event instead. So in our button element, let's add an onClick event that calls a function which we can call toggleColor1. And then we can write out our toggleColor1 function. And all this is going to do is call our setIsColor1 and change it to notIsColor1. So this works great if we just have one piece of state that we're toggling, but it isn't super great in terms of reusability. Like in this example, where we wanted 3 buttons with different state being toggled. To do that this way, we'd end up with 3 pieces of state and 3 different toggle functions, which seems like a lot of unnecessary code. So instead, we can create a custom hook to handle this logic, and we're going to be creating a hook that we're going to call useToggle. And useToggle will use useState inside of it. We can put this in our current file, but typically it's convention to add this to a separate file, so we're going to do that. We can start by creating a new directory called hooks, and then inside of it making a file called useToggle.js. In here is where we're going to define our function that handles our toggle logic. And ideally, this function is going to, similarly to useState, return a piece of state and a setter function. Except this setter function is going to be a function that not only sets our state, but toggles it as well. So instead of having to write multiple toggle functions in our app.js file, we'll have a toggle function in our custom hook, and we can just call that hook instead. To do this, we can start by importing useState, since we're now going to be using it here. Then we can define our function, which we're going to call useToggle, which is going to take in 1 argument, and that's actually going to be the initial value. Eventually, when we call it, it's going to look something like const isColor1 toggle isColor1 equals useToggle, and then we're going to need to set some default state. So to keep it simple, let's just call this argument default state. And we can also give this a default value of false, just in case nothing's specified. Then we can go ahead and call useState and initialize it with default state. And remember, useState gives us back an array of 2 values, a piece of state and a setter function, which we can go ahead and destructure out. Then we can define our toggle function. This is going to simply just set our state to not state. So we're basically just taking all the things we did in our app.js file and making them into a reusable hook. And from here, the last thing we want to do is just return an array with our state and our toggle function. And then we're just missing an export, so let's add that. And then we can head over to our app.js and import useToggle from hooks/useToggle. And we actually no longer are going to be using our useState hook, so we can go ahead and get rid of that import. Alright, so we've created and imported our useToggle hook, so let's just get rid of all our useStates and replace them with the useToggle hook we just created. And for readability, since we're no longer using useState, we can rename all our setter functions to be toggle functions. Let's just call these toggle isColor1, 2, and 3. From here, we can go ahead and delete all of these toggle functions since this logic is already being handled inside of our custom hook. And lastly, we can just change our onClicks to take in our second thing we destructured out of our useToggle, which is our toggle function. Let's give it a refresh and we can test it out. Awesome! There we have our first custom hook together. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like and hit subscribe.